that the identity of the Messiah is someone who goes and he has an agenda for the entire group, for the entire community of Israel. And the other part is that he has to be willing to fight the battle of God. Somebody who retires to an ivory tower and has other people taking care of him and doesn't wish to get involved in the world, just wants to be involved in his teachings is a wonderful thing as far as being a student is concerned. But that is not the role of a melech, that's not the role of a king, that's not the role of the Mashiach. Mashiach has to be active and be willing to take on those who are the enemies of the Jewish people. And so he has to be a man of courage, a man of learning, a man who is concerned with the community and has an agenda for the community, and a person who is not overwhelmed by the surrounding society and the nations of the world. He's willing to go ahead and put his nation first, and then he will deal with the rest of the world. And that type of nature we saw with the last two Lubavitcher Rebbes. That's the reason why they have this adulation by their followers. That does not mean that they are the Messiah, because the Messiah has to be someone who's alive and has to be someone who does these things in the physical world and has to transform the kingdom of Israel back into a Davidic kingdom, has to bring all the Jews into Israel, and has to establish all of the rules back into the way they were done during the time of the temple, and build the temple, and then have his kingdom spread all over the world. That's what makes Messiah. Anything else is not a Messiah. It's wishful thinking. And so, if somebody wants to call the Rebbe the Mashiach, that's fine. That's a feeling that the person can have, but that's not a reality. It's not a halachic reality. As such, there are people who criticize those who believe in the Rebbe as Mashiach, that somehow or other, because the Rebbe passed away, that he can no longer be the Messiah. And I've proven to you that the Talmud in Brachos in Yerushalmi, second chapter of Brachos, I can't tell you which page because there are 3 or 4 different printings, so depends upon which version you're going to see, but it's at the beginning of the second chapter, not at the very beginning, the second page of the second chapter of Brachos in the Yerushalmi, where he talks about what are the names of Mashiach, very similar to what we have in Sanhedrin of the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 98b, where they discuss what are the names of the Messiah. From that discussion, what are the names of the Messiah, it's clear that every student who studies from a great rabbi must believe that his Rav could possibly be the Messiah if he has the personal characteristics that King David had. If he's a person who is a fearer of God, who's not afraid of criticism, is not afraid of changing the Jewish environment, and he's willing to spread Yiddishkeit to the masses, then such a person, such a Rav could possibly be the Messiah. We see this from the discussion of the Talmud, where there were 4 different Rosh Yeshivas, heads of academies. Each one of the academies, they themselves said, and the students said, that the Rosh Yeshiva was that he was the Messiah. And in fact, the students of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, believed he to be the Messiah. The discussion, however, is that it is possible that somebody who is not living could also be the Messiah. And there are those who, David Berger has poo-pooed that's just a theoretical kind of thing. It's not meant to be taken literally because it is a Christian concept. And I have proven from the fact that King David was considered the Messiah by an entire generation of rabbis in the Jerusalemite Talmud. And in fact, Rav Papa, when he asks this question to Abaye, how can you say that we will seek out another David? How can you say we can seek out another David? David's supposed to be the Messiah. You see that Rav Papa, up until that point, certainly believed that King David was going to be the Messiah. King David at that point had been dead now for 1,200 years, when Abaye answered him that King David would only be the second in command. Now, why has David Berger been oblivious, turned a blind eye to this? The answer is he has an answer, but the answer makes no sense. So he's not going to come on a video He's not going to publicize the answer, but I know his answer. His answer will be that there's such a concept as Gilgul Neshama. There will be a reincarnation of the soul of David in another person's body. Why is this not a reasonable answer? Very simple. Until the 16th century, this was never discussed in any book, in any Torah book. This could not have been the interpretation of the men of the Jerusalemite Talmud, for there is no indication in any of the Talmud, whether it be Babylonian or Jerusalemite, that they ever discussed or believed in this concept of reincarnation. The reincarnation of a soul to another soul is mentioned in only three books, halachic books, of the 16th century and on later. Today, there's a lot of discussions about it, the reincarnation, Gilgul. It's very popular among the so-called Kabbalists and so on. But there is no discussion. This is not a serious kind of interpretation of a piece of Talmud. There's not a single reference in any of the major Jewish sources that will reference any kind of opinion talking about Gilgul Neshama, the reincarnation of the soul. And anybody reading the discussion of the Jerusalemite Talmud or the Talmud in Sanhedrin realizes that this could not have been the object of their discussion, because then it would twist the discussion completely out of any kind of realistic phase. What difference does it make then if it's from the living, from the dead? If the name is David, it could be a reincarnation of it. It makes it so grotesque that it defies description. And so David Berger will not publicly come on and say this, because he would be laughed out of the Beis Midrash. There is no place for saying that this is the meaning of that Talmud. The meaning of the Talmud is very, very clear. King David will be the Messiah, despite the fact that he is deceased now 2,900 years. That's the opinion of that group of people. We don't hold by that opinion. We hold by Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabba that it will be a contemporary. However, why was King David thought to be the Messiah? I'll explain that to you, because Rashi in Sanhedrin says that Messiah is at the gate of the Garden of Eden. Why is he at the gate? Why isn't he in the Garden of Eden by itself? The answer is because at any moment Messiah is supposed to come and save the people. If he's in Gan Eden, he's totally oblivious. If he's in the Garden of Eden, he's totally oblivious to what's going on in the world, and would be required to be shaken up and sent out of there. Whereas if he's at the gate of Gan Eden, means he's near the physical world. At any moment he can come. Most opinions don't agree with that. Rambam, Maimonides, doesn't agree with that. He says it's going to be a living person. But even if it were a person who's deceased, we have histories of people who are very righteous and holy people whose bodies have remained whole. And King David's body remained whole. That's the reason why King David could possibly be the Messiah, according to his opinions, because he wouldn't have to undergo any kind of change. Just pick himself up and leave and go, become the Messiah. And that is true for certain very, very holy people who, in the course of their lifetime, purified their bodies, and their bodies did not deteriorate. Very, very few people, 1 in a billion perhaps, 1 in whatever, but there are cases where such people have lived. I've told you a case. The Rebbe Rashab was seen whole 21, 22 years after he was buried. He had to be reburied, and the people saw his body was whole. And that's been seen also by students of the Stoliner Rebbe. 14 months after he was buried in New York, he was taken to Tiberias, and they saw that the body was whole. And so this is something that happens only with certain elite holy people, but it's possible that those holy people, because their bodies are whole, that they might rise up and they may be the Messiah that we're waiting for. I don't know. And so to conclude, David Berger's attack on those who believe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is the Mashiach despite being dead is an attack that's vicious and has no basis in Jewish thought, and it is not a Christian concept. The people may be deranged and meshugit, that's fine. Mishugas does not, craziness does not make you a heretic.